Oh,
Our mission today, well, it's quite an undertaking. We're diving deep into the fascinating evolution of American naming traditions. We'll be tracing things right from the late 19th century, straight through to today, this modern age of, let's call it, celebrity uniqueness.
it really is a huge shift we're mapping out. We're using data that starts with the Social Security Administration's records back in the 1880s. And that data shows this incredibly solid adherence to classic names. And then we're going to contrast that with the, well, highly individualized, often really boundary-pushing choices we're seeing from celebrities now in 2024, 2025.
Yeah, when you look at some of the names popping up today,
Yeah.
these names that really go for unique, sometimes unexpected, even bordering on mythological. I mean, Golden Ray, Aquaman Moses.
Right.
It seems almost impossible that, just over a century ago, the naming landscape was, well, almost static.
Exactly. We're essentially charting the influence of tradition versus the influence of fame. For over 100 years, tradition, religion, national history, those are really the main sources for naming inspiration.
Yeah, no.
Now it's pop culture, it's social media, and this intense desire, I think, for creative expression that really dictates the trends. We'll examine how major cultural shifts, key historical moments,
Right.
how they've continually redefined what parents choose to call their kids. Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start with the history, the bedrock, the reign of the classics.
So the SSA starts recording this data in the 1880s, and it gives us this perfect snapshot, doesn't it, of
Yeah.
a very traditional conservative society. The names parents were choosing then, they weren't whimsical at all. They were deeply rooted in history, faith, heritage.
Absolutely. It was a very focused pool of names, wasn't it? Dominated by Hebrew and Germanic origins. If you look at the girls' list for the 1880s, Mary is number one. Then you have Anna, Emma, Elizabeth, and Margaret. Mary and Anna, Hebrew names. Elizabeth, too. Emma comes from Old German, meaning whole.
And this reflects the demographics, right?
Yeah.
Immigration patterns of the time.
Precisely. It's a strong reflection of the era's huge influx of Eastern and Southern European immigrants, including many Jewish families. They really adhered to those established biblical naming conventions.
And if we drill down into the boys' list from that same decade, the 1880s, there's this fascinating tension, I think. The top 5 names, John, William, James, George, Charles Cuff, they all have deep roots, sure, but they also share this significant, maybe slightly ironic political thing going on. They were all names of various kings of England.
Yes, that's a really remarkable finding from the sources. Even though America had fought for independence a century before, that residual cultural, historical influence of the British monarchy was, well, undeniable, especially when choosing these powerful, recognized male names.
So you have the tradition, but also this echo of royalty.
Exactly. John and James provide that strong biblical anchor, while William and Charles, their Germanic, signaling strength rulership. And George, of course, means tiller of the soil. That's the Greek origin. But it also carries the weight of St. George, the Christian martyr, so it blends the secular and the sacred quite neatly.
What really stands out about this whole period, though, is just how resilient that status quo was. You move into the 1890s, there are social changes, industrial changes happening. But the top 5 boys' names
Yeah.
and their exact ranking from the 1880s, completely unchanged. John, William, James, George, Charles. Still the top 5 in that order.
That kind of statistical consistency is, well, it's almost unheard of in modern naming data. It really signals a society that deeply valued stability and tradition way over novelty.
So less churn back then.
Much less. For girls in the 1890s, you still had Mary, Margaret, and Elizabeth holding strong as constants. But we do see Helen, a name of Greek origin, entering the top 5. And there's an interesting potential correlation our research highlighted, the rise of the National Woman Suffrage Association during this time. It's possible mothers were maybe gravitating towards names like Helen that felt strong, classical.
That's interesting. A subtle influence, perhaps.
Perhaps. Now, moving into the 20th century, the pattern, remarkably, it just persisted. In the 1900s, we actually hit a 3-decade streak of complete continuity on the boys' list.
3 decades, the same 5 names, same order.
Exactly. John, William, James, George, Charles. Still the same. I wonder if that speaks more to, the dominance of male inheritance traditions or just a really deep-seated cultural preference for these specific names.
Could be both, I suppose.
I think it is both. You had the traditional patriarchal structure favoring repeating forenames, and the cultural landscape was just, well, it was less fractured by media influence back then. Literature was still king. The sources point out authors like Charles Dickens, whose works were still incredibly popular, helped maintain the stature of names like Charles.
Okay, so literary influence was a big factor. What about the girls in the 1900s?
Mary was still completely untouchable at number one, but Ruth, a Hebrew name meaning friend, did enter the list. And this might be a very early example of political influence, actually.
How so?
President Grover Cleveland named his daughter Ruth, and it's thought that boosted its visibility, giving it a push into the top five.
Fascinating. So even then, a president's choice could make a difference.
It seems so. By the 1910s, we finally see the beginnings of, let's say, cracks in this very conservative naming structure. For boys, two new names join the leaders. John, William, and James are still there, but Robert and Joseph make an appearance.
Okay, Joseph, that feels very biblical. God shall add another son.
Right, a straightforward reaffirmation of the Bible's enduring power as a source. And Robert, also Germanic origin, very sturdy name.
And for girls,
Yeah.
Mary, still number one.
Oh, yes. Mary was still dominating, nearly 500,000 births recorded with that name in the 1910s alone. But Dorothy, which is Greek for gift of God, managed to edge out Margaret. And Helen remained popular. The ongoing popularity is often tied to the continued success of Helen Keller's 1901 biography, The Story of My Life.
Ah, so that shows how popular nonfiction figures, personal stories, even before the explosion of film, were starting to have a bit of influence.
Exactly. It shows that personal public fame could start to compete even slightly with traditional history. We're seeing the first signs.
Okay, so if the 1910s were just preparing the ground, the 1920s really brought the change. Let's move into what our sources call the Great Upheaval and look at how pop culture really breaks through that traditional veil.
Right. This era, it spans the Roaring Twenties, the Great Depression, World War II, the post-war recovery, and it really illustrates this decisive shift in where Americans were looking for inspiration. They moved away from the pulpit and the history books and towards, well, the radio, the cinema, even the newspaper comics.
The 1920s give us the first really clear evidence of this shift, don't they? Especially for girls. Mary was still holding on at number one, over 700,000 babies named Mary in that decade. But the name Betty surged into the top five, landing at number four. Now, Betty is a traditional diminutive of Elizabeth, but the research highlights that this particular surge was directly linked to the burgeoning flapper culture, and specifically a very popular comic strip character named Betty, created by Charles Voigt. It ran for over 2 decades, starting in 1920.
That's absolutely critical. Parents weren't just naming daughters after queens or saints anymore. They were naming them after a glamorous contemporary media character who represented the zeitgeist, the spirit of the 1920s. That's mass media influence right there in the data.
And for the boys, the unthinkable happened. Robert took the number one spot.
Finally dethroning Jean.
Finally. After reigning almost unchallenged since the SSA started tracking, Charles also rejoined the top five. And our sources suggest a pretty compelling correlation here with the peak career of Charlie Chaplin.
The silent film star.
Yeah, arguably the biggest celebrity on the planet at that time.
That connection is intriguing, isn't it? Is the popularity of Charles a direct nod to Chaplin, or is it just that Chaplin's massive prominence kept a traditional name really high in the public consciousness?
Hard to say for sure.
Regardless, it feels like the silver screen had sort of replaced the English throne as a major source of subconscious naming inspiration.
And the impact of film became even more pronounced during the Great Depression in the 1930s. Our sources detail how names offered this powerful form of, well, distraction, escapism.
Definitely.
For girls, Shirley, Barbara, and Patricia burst onto the list, pushing out some of the older classics.
And the case of Shirley Temple is just the most direct correlation we see in the early 20th century data. Shirley Temple, Little Miss Miracle, she starred in over 25 films between 32 and 39. This coincided precisely with the name Shirley just skyrocketing in popularity. That child star offered this much-needed symbol of innocence, of joy, during a time of immense national hardship and anxiety.
So the cultural anxiety sort of drove demand for these joyful figures.
Yes, and parents then translated that directly into their children's names. It's a powerful point about psychological projection, I think. Naming kids not just after what you admire, but maybe after what you wish your world looked like.
Yeah, that makes sense. For boys in the 1930s, Robert held on to that top spot. James, John, William were still up there. But Richard, a strong German name meaning strong ruler, entered the top five.
Moving into the 1940s, modernization really accelerated with the wartime changes. Mary, astonishingly, was still number one.
Still holding on.
Incredible resilience. But the new additions, Linda and Carol, they felt decidedly more modern than, say, Elizabeth or Margaret. And the rise of Linda is specifically tracked back to the power of music. Jack Lawrence's 1946 single, Linda, which he famously wrote for Linda Eastman, who later became Linda McCartney.
Right.
That song gave the name a dramatic boost. A single pop song generated a major national naming trend.
Wow, that's influence. The 1940s boys list saw James take over #1, and William return to the top 5 after falling out briefly. Film influence is consistently cited here, too, suggesting that frequent movie-going during the war kept popularizing names associated with reliable, strong figures like James Stewart.
Yes. And when we get to the 1950s, the scene is really set for the massive upheaval that's coming in the 60s. Mary, while still #1, was starting to look genuinely vulnerable. But the biggest shift, I think, happens on the boys list. We see the significant resurgence of strong, explicitly biblical names, but blended with the established classics.
Okay, so James stayed #1.
James stayed #1. But Michael, the Hebrew name for the archangel, debuted very strongly at #2. It recorded over 800,000 babies named Michael in that decade alone.
800,000. That's huge.
Massive. David, also Hebrew, meaning beloved, also entered the top 5. When you look at the sheer scale of Michael's appearance, it's astronomical. To put 800,000 in context, that level of name saturation means roughly 1 in every 40 boys born during the 1950s was named Michael.
1 in 40. Wow.
Yeah, that is massive dominance. So this mix of established classics like James, along with these fresh but powerfully religious names like Michael and David, it provided the new standard. A standard, though, that would be very quickly challenged by the social revolutions of the 1960s, which is where we need to turn next.
Okay, the 1960s. This marked the irreversible end of that naming era that started way back in the 1880s. When you look at the SSA data for this decade, the social to political upheaval across the country, it's perfectly mirrored by the shattering of those traditional naming conventions. And the most significant event, of course, Mary gets dethroned.
After more than 80 years at #1, Mary finally fell to #2, and she was surpassed by Lisa. This wasn't just a random fluctuation. It really reflected a societal desire for newness, maybe a rejection of the old established norms. Names like Susan, Karen, and Kimberly also debuted in the top 5, all names that had a much more contemporary, less historical feel to them.
And the power of celebrity was truly cemented here, wasn't it? You see that direct influence. While Lisa might have been rising anyway, Elvis Presley naming his daughter Lisa Marie in 1968. That just provided that final massive boost.
Amplification, exactly. For boys, Michael peaked at #1. We mentioned over 800,000 in the 50s. In the 60s, that figure went slightly up, over 833,000 babies named Michael, solidifying its place as the dominant male name of the era. John moved up slightly, which is often partly attributed to the popularity and the enduring legacy of President John F. Kennedy. So you see that intersection of politics and naming trends again.
Right. Then the 1970s. This truly ushered in the age of the modern blockbuster name. Film really took the primary role as the source of inspiration. Jennifer, an English name, Fair Spirit, it completely dominated the girls' chart, vaulting to #1.
And drilling down into that specific data point, the rise of Jennifer is so strongly linked to the lead character Jenny, played by Ally McGraw, in that incredibly popular 1970 movie Love Story.
Oh, Love Story. Right.
That single film provided this cultural touchstone that just resonated with millions of new parents. And just like that, Mary completely vanished from the top 5 girls list for the first time in recorded history.
Gone. Meanwhile, Michael held on to #1 for the boys, starting its massive 4-decade reign. But we do see more diversification. 2 new Greek names surged into the top 3. Christopher, meaning Christ-bearer, and Jason, meaning healer.
So parents were still seeking classic roots, perhaps, but preferring names that felt a bit fresher, maybe less overly familiar than John or George.
Makes sense. The 1980s and 1990s then really consolidated the dominance of pop culture and media celebrity. For girls, Jessica became #1 in both decades.
Yeah, and this is a great example of multiple simultaneous celebrity influences potentially working together. The obsession with Jessica has been attributed both to the highly respected actress Jessica Lange and, perhaps more surprisingly, the fictional, very alluring icon Jessica Rabbit from the 1988 film Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
It's fascinating, isn't it? That a real human actress and this, animated, highly stylized fictional character could exert similar pulls on parents' naming decisions.
It really shows that it's the perceived emotional power, the glamour associated with name, kind of regardless of the person's reality, that matters most to parents making that choice.
Right. And on the boys' side, Michael's grip remained completely unbreakable. #1 for 4 decades straight.
4 decades. And that persistence was, well, it was unequivocally fueled by the rise of these mega celebrities across different fields. You had Michael Jackson in music, Michael Jordan in sports, Michael J. Fox in film and TV. Michael was the name that defined late 20th century masculinity in America.
The 1990s also saw Ashley, which is an English name that was historically male or unisex, become number 2 for girls.
Yes, and that's a really crucial indicator, I think, of the growing trend toward gender-neutral names, or at least softer-sounding names for girls. Moving further away from those strong traditional standards of the previous century, Jacob, a Hebrew name, finally entered the top 5 for boys in the 90s, breaking up that longtime core group a little.
Okay, so then the new millennium, the 2000s, this finally signaled the end of Michael's long dominance.
Yes, Emily topped the girls' list, and Madison climbed to number 2. Now, Madison is interesting because that trend took about 16 years to fully manifest after Daryl Hannah's mermaid character used the name in the 1984 movie Splash.
16 years! Wow, it's a long tail effect from one movie.
It really demonstrates the long, slow burn sometimes of specific media influence. Emma, Olivia, and Hannah rounded out the girls' list.
And for boys in the 2000s.
Jacob took number 1, finally displacing Michael for the first time since the 1960s. Daniel also entered the top 5. Our analysis suggested Daniel Radcliffe's massive Harry Potter fame was a potential influencing factor there. It really highlights how these global book and film franchises were becoming the new dominant source material for names.
Right, Pottermania was huge.
Huge. And by the 2010s, we see this sort of return to romance feel, maybe perceived elegance, though still heavily influenced by contemporary celebrities. Emma returned to number 1 for girls.
Emma's back.
Emma's back, followed by Sophia, Olivia, Isabella, and Ava. And you can easily link those to popular actresses like Emma Stone, Olivia Wilde. They provide the cultural currency driving those choices.
The 2010s boys list, though, that seems like maybe the biggest departure yet from the 1880s. Noah and Liam displace pretty much all the traditional names at number 1 and 2.
It's a huge shift. The fact that William returns at number 5 is an interesting counterpoint, though, potentially driven by that, never-ending fascination Americans seem to have with the British royals, specifically Prince William.
So in 140 years, we've gone from just a handful of names defining, 30% of the male population to this landscape where basically every name outside the top 10 is a potential choice.
Exactly. And this perfectly sets the stage for the true individuality, the real outlier territory of the celebrity sphere today.
Right.
If the 20th century was about moving from, say, John to Michael, the 21st century feels like it's about moving from Michael to the ultra unique. We are now deeply immersed in the age of the celebrity anomaly, where uniqueness isn't just a choice, it often feels like the baseline expectation, especially for the rich and famous.
This new class of trendsetters, they're defining a category of names that our sources describe as classic, creative, and downright darling. Often pushing boundaries far beyond what the general public might put in their top 5. It's a massive spectrum we're seeing here.
Absolutely. On one end, you still have those elegant classics that feel aspirational, maybe traditional, but less common, like Aaron Judge choosing Nora Rose. But on the other end, you have these bold, often descriptive monikers, like Patrick Mahomes naming his daughter Golden Ray. The spectrum is just vast. It reflects the diverse backgrounds and, crucially, the creative industries these celebrities work in.
Okay, let's dive into some of the really distinctive recent examples from 2024-2025. You mentioned royalty and traditionalists. Princess Beatrice chose Athena, still powerful, established. And then you have very traditional family names like Naomi Biden choosing William Brandon V, really emphasizing legacy.
But then the conversation just shifts entirely, doesn't it, to names that prioritize immediate distinctiveness above all else. Ronda Rousey's choice, Yukula Pamahina-Kapiha, or Trisha Paytas choosing Aquaman Moses. These are prime examples of leveraging mythology, pop culture references, maybe just sound, for maximum attention and uniqueness.
The 2024 highlights also included these highly conceptual names, like Cardinal from Cameron Diaz, or the blues-inspired Jack Blues from Justin and Hailey Bieber.
And these names, they're rarely just random choices. Our research indicates they tend to fall into these clear, modern thematic trends. Trends that really influence Generation Alpha kids born since 2010, who are just swimming in the sea of pop culture and social media influence.
What are the main themes?
The major ones seem to be earth and nature, place names, animals, and then sort of regal or status names.
Okay, earth and nature, that seems huge.
Immense. It signifies a connection to the natural world, maybe, or perhaps just a preference for conceptual beauty over traditional heritage. The sources extensively detail Jamie Oliver's children's names, which almost sound like, romantic poetry fragments.
Right, like Poppy Honey Rosie, Daisy Boo Pamela.
Buddy Bear, Petal Blossom Rainbow.
That layering of multiple nature words, it creates this instantly memorable phrase, doesn't it? More than just a name.
It really does. Other popular examples in this category include things like Onyx, Rumble, Gravity, Jupiter, Ocean Kent Emmett, Atlas Noah, and notably, Air Webster, the name Kylie Jenner, and Travis Scott eventually settled on after changing it from the original, less successful choice of Wolf.
Ah, the name change. That willingness to change it after birth really shows how seriously celebrities take this naming thing as almost a branding exercise.
Absolutely. Then you have place names. They often offer a sense of global sophistication, maybe a meaningful connection to a specific location. Think of Mariah Carey's twins, Moroccan and Monroe.
Or Ed Sheeran's daughter, Lyra Antarctica. Reese Witherspoon chose Tennessee.
Right, and sometimes you see this conceptual naming pop up just in the middle name, providing a sort of quirky surprise, like Wilmer Valderrama's daughter, Nakano Ocean Valderrama.
Okay, then the animal kingdom, what's the vibe there?
Used to evoke characteristics like strength, maybe independence, wildness. Examples include Sparrow James Midnight, Nicole Richie, Cricket and Birdie, Busy Phillips, Bear Blue, Alicia Silverstone. These names project a very specific, often sort of bohemian lifestyle image.
And finally, names invoking status or royalty.
Still popular. Think Lilibet Lily Diana, named directly after Queen Elizabeth II's family nickname. Or Reign from Kourtney Kardashian. It demonstrates a desire for that inherited dignity or importance, even if the names themselves are relatively modern applications of those concepts.
Okay, so all of this then leads us to the section of the truly unconventional names. The ones that are abstract, word-based, or just seem to exist in their own linguistic universe.
Yeah, the gold standard for this level of abstract naming probably remains Elon Musk and Grimes' choices. AE12, who they nicknamed X, and Exodarch Sideril, nicknamed Y.
Right, those names almost defy traditional phonetics and spelling. They're essentially creating new brands from scratch.
Exactly, and we also see just word names or abstract concepts being used as first names quite a bit now. Radix, Cameron Diaz, Pilot Inspector, Jason Lee.
Pilot Inspector is a classic example.
It really is. Sunday Molly, Mike Myers. Conceptual choices like Honor, Allure, Lyric, and Wisdom, Kel Mitchell. Una Page, Amber Heard. Wave, Cardi B. This extreme deviation from the Marys and Johns of the 1880s, it really forces us to move beyond just the data of what they're choosing and into the deep sociological question of why they're choosing these names.
Okay, so why this push towards such nonconformity? It's not accidental, you're saying. It's underpinned by strong psychological, sociological, even professional incentives, especially for this high net worth, high profile group.
Precisely. Let's start with the psychological theories. One psychologist, Jen Berman, suggests this uniqueness stems from a kind of fundamental identity projection among famous people. They operate, perhaps subconsciously, under the belief, I'm special, I'm different, and therefore my child must also be special and different.
So the child becomes an extension of their unique brand.
In a way, yes. That mindset is critical because it moves beyond just simple preference into self-perception. The celebrity might view the child as part of their own unique identity and uses the name to signal that individuality right from the start. They might feel that a common name would somehow dilute the specialness of the child, and by extension, maybe even themselves.
And there's a socioeconomic angle, too, Professor Michael Varnum's research.
Yes, he found a statistically significant link. People in better socioeconomic conditions, the ultra-wealthy, which definitely includes most celebrities, are just likelier to choose uncommon names.
Why is that?
Well, the theory is that they are financially and socially secure enough to basically withstand any potential drawbacks of an unusual name. You know, administrative hassles, maybe teasing. They feel they can afford to stand out from the crowd. They have the means, the social standing, to disregard conventional biases that might hinder someone with fewer resources. They don't need a traditional name like John or William to signal conformity or professionalism in the same way others might.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And this desire for creative output, it's linked to their jobs, too, right? Acting, music, content creation. These are creative fields.
Exactly. Naming expert Laura Wattenberg suggested that choosing these weird or unconventional names is almost an inherent extension of that creative drive. The name itself becomes another piece of artistic expression, a public declaration of originality.
Okay, beyond the psychological, you mentioned a practical professional reason, especially in Hollywood.
Yes, the Screen Actors Guild, SAG-AFTRA, they have very strict rules prohibiting actors from using the same professional name as someone who's already registered and currently working.
Ah, so it avoids a future name conflict, like the Emma Stone, Emily Stone situation.
Precisely. A unique name preemptively solves that Nepo baby issue, or just any future actor issue, by guaranteeing a distinct stage name right from birth. If your name is Pilot Inspector, you're probably not going to find another one in the Guild registry.
It guarantees an uncontested professional identity immediately. Smart, in a way.
It is, and of course, we absolutely cannot ignore the attention economy. In our digital age, attention is currency. Celebrities thrive on media focus, and these unique name reveals, they serve as incredibly valuable content. The public announcement of a name like Aquaman Moses, or when AAP Rocky announced RZA and Riot Rose, that generates huge waves of media coverage, social media discussion. It leverages the media's guaranteed focus on these unconventional choices.
It's important to keep it in context, though, right? While celebrity choices are really amplified, our sources remind us they are sort of riding a larger general societal trend away from tradition.
That's a crucial point. The data clearly shows that the proportion of, say, boys, given one of the top 10 names, dropped significantly from about 30% in 1950 down to just 10% by 2007. So even regular parents are prioritizing individuality more than they used to. Celebrities are simply pushing that envelope much, much further.
But there's a potential cost to this forced uniqueness.
Yes, there absolutely is. The pressure of living up to a highly branded or unusual name can be severe for the child later on. The story of David Bowie's son, initially named Zowie Bowie, is the classic cautionary tale here.
Right, he changed his name.
He eventually changed his name to the much more conventional Duncan Jones. He wanted to forge his own path as a film producer, deliberately seeking some anonymity and distance from his father's incredibly unique global brand.
That story brings us right to this concept of nominative determinism, the idea, the theory, that names can actually influence an individual's life path, often based on the positive or negative associations they carry. And parents often choose a name, hoping their child will somehow embody the perceived positive traits of a famous namesake.
We see really clear statistical evidence of this positive association boosting a name's popularity. Take Leonardo DiCaprio. After Titanic exploded in 1997, he became this global heartthrob. The name Leonardo saw an immediate and sustained surge. It went from around 550 babies named Leonardo in 1996 to approximately 4,300 babies getting that name by 2022. That kind of exponential growth is tied directly to the celebrity's perceived positive image.
And you see the same effect with more contemporary figures, like Zendaya.
Oh, absolutely. Before she really rose to fame on Disney Channel's Shake It Up around 2010, that name was barely used. Now, with every major role, Dune, Challengers, Hit, shows the name's popularity just keeps climbing steeply.
We even see really rapid, almost immediate influence sometimes. The sources noted a surge in the name Honora right after the 2024 movie Honora won the Academy Award for Best Picture in March 2025.
Yeah, that shows that the cultural currency of positive media association can be almost instantaneous now.
But then there's the flip side, the risk of a name being tarnished. And this seems statistically more pronounced and, unfortunately, often more gendered.
It does. Negative media coverage, especially involving scandal or controversy, can cause an immediate and sharp decline in a name's use. The data reveals some pretty striking patterns, particularly concerning societal scrutiny of women.
Like Marilyn Monroe.
Exactly. The name Marilyn saw a sharp, identifiable decline starting around 1955. This coincides precisely with Marilyn Monroe's intense media sexualization, the release of the 7-year itch. The sustained, often negative, tabloid scrutiny seemed to actively stigmatize the name itself in the public eye.
Yeah, Monica Lewinsky.
Similarly, the name Monica saw a documented sharp decline following the Clinton-Lewinsky affair in the late 1990s. Our research points directly to the cause being merciless media attention and widespread public shaming.
And Hillary Clinton.
Furthermore, the intense scrutiny directed at Hillary Clinton, starting really around Bill Clinton's 1992 election, coincided with a significant decline in the popularity of the name Hillary. The consistent data across these three figures suggests a pretty clear pattern. When a prominent woman becomes the subject of sustained negative media coverage, especially related to perceived impropriety or scandal, the name itself can really fall out of favor.
And here's where the gender disparity seems really obvious. The analysis found these clear, direct cause and effect name declines tied specifically to women, Marilyn, Monica, Hillary. But conversely, male forenames like Harvey, Woody, Lance, or Bill, they seem largely unaffected by scandals involving figures like Weinstein, Allen, Armstrong, or Cosby.
That's what the data suggests. The theory derived from this is that women are, historically and societally, held to stricter standards regarding behavior and, well, gender norms. Acts of perceived impropriety seem to lead to far heavier stigmatization of the name associated with the woman, whereas male scandals, even equally high-profile ones, just don't seem to carry the same lasting negative impact on the popularity of common male names. The names John, James, William were so incredibly stable for so long, not even major scandals involving men with those names could really break their centuries-long hold on popularity.
The only exceptions among male figures seem to be non-Americans whose names might conflict with national identity.
Generally, yes. The data did identify name declines for foreign names connected to infamous historical figures like Osama, Adolf, and Vladimir. This suggests a strong disincentive against names that fundamentally conflict with American values or, safety concerns.
Which brings us back to the ultimate cautionary tale, maybe, involving a very dynamic, living, and increasingly polarizing figure, Elon Musk.
Right. The name Elon saw a significant increase in popularity starting around 2013, and that was tied directly to the rise of Tesla stock and the general positive narrative around him as this innovative entrepreneur.
But the implication for parents who chose that name, then?
Exactly. Those who named their child Elon during that peak period, well, they may now be finding themselves trying to distance their family somewhat from his more controversial and polarizing activities and statements in 2025.
It really highlights the risk.
And that's the final lesson, maybe, of nominative determinism in our modern media age. Naming a child after a dynamic, living person carries a huge inherent risk because people and their public reputations inevitably change. A fictional character like Elsa from Frozen, she's static, reliable. A living public figure is absolutely not. And unlike changing your opinion of a celebrity, you can't easily change a birth certificate just because the person you admired shifted their brand or became controversial, even if you named your child Apple.
Okay, so we've journeyed 140 years. We've witnessed this incredible movement from the deep religious foundations of Mary and John, through the rise of film-driven icons like Jennifer and Michael, all the way to today's world of creative, sometimes boundary-pushing monikers like Golden Ray and, yes, Aquaman Moses.
Our names really are a continuous record of our collective cultural values, aren't they? We've clearly moved from prioritizing deep tradition and stability. You see that in the persistence of names like Mary and John for over a century to this modern emphasis on individuality, creative expression, maybe immediate brand recognition. And all of that is amplified by wealth, by celebrity culture. Understanding these shifts really does provide deep insight into the aspirations and maybe even the anxieties of our time.
So as you, our listener, reflect on this deep dive, maybe consider this provocative thought. Given the speed of social media, the accelerating nature of celebrity scandal and opinion shifts, what common names today might be irrevocably tarnished in the next decade? And conversely, which seemingly weird celebrity name from today will surprise us all by becoming a future classic, maybe even a top 10 name down the road?
The power of a name is truly immense, and its destiny, well, it's always an open question.
If you enjoyed this deep dive into the data of monikers, please remember to subscribe, like, and maybe comment to share your own thoughts on the power of celebrity influence and these fascinating name trends.
Thank you for listening to VSOW.